In John 1:1, it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. Numbers are just words, and they're words describing the relationship between things, between existence, between what things are. But in order to have things, you have to have nothing. You have to have a beginning. But we don't know what that beginning is. So God holds that beginning. God is that beginning. He calls himself the beginning and the end. He's outside of numbers, but he's also in numbers. He's zero. He's the nothingness of space and time. He is your universe. He is your anything in space and time. Now that's just a creator. God is just a creator. People don't like that because they go, but then I have to submit to a creator. We live in a creation, whether you think it's heliocentric model, whether you think it's a geocentric model, whatever it is you think, it is a creation. And you don't want to attribute it to a creator. And people don't want to attribute it to a creator because they think they're the creator. They want to attribute it to the information of the creation so then they can be the creator. They don't want to submit to a creator. Now, zero proves God, something coming from nothing. You just can't have existence without a creator. There's just no other explanation for it. Every explanation for it is religion. Just saying it's a God, or saying it's a Big Bang, or saying it's just something from nothing. I mean, it's in saying it's a creator, saying it's God. That's more responsible than saying giving any other explanation for it, and saying that that's logical, and saying that that's practical, saying that's something you can observe. You just can't observe that. So we usually just say it's a creator. And for the most part, even in scientific communities, even like those guys like Carl Sagan used to say, yeah, math does prove that there's a creator. It does prove that there's a beginning. That beginning comes from a system, and it's very specific, and you can't change it. Now, they used to say that, and most people do agree with that. But what happens is then they say, but we found this other stuff out, and this other stuff says you can change the creation and recreate the creation. And fans of that system have them come along and said, oh yeah, that's true. And then therefore, you can prove that there isn't a creator. We're the creator. And when you get back to the beginning, when you get back to zero, when you get back to one, when you get back to two, the beginning and the end, you have to attribute value to that, to something. And if you're not attributing it to a spirit, then I don't know who you're attributing it to. Most people will say if it's not God, they'll say it's Lucifer the light, because the first light you see in the sky is Venus, and they used to call it Lucifer. They used to call it El. Now they're worshiping the creation. That's just creation worship. Every other system, there's no system that can explain the creation without using the creation. It's just impossible. You have to use the creation to have a creator. If you don't want to have a creator, if you don't want to say there isn't a creator, then you're just using the creation. And that's impossible to do. You're just using the creation. And the creation is proof that it is created. It is a beginning and end. It is started. It is not something. It reciprocates itself, and it recycles itself. But it is started by something, and it's held by something as well. And the math proves that. 1 and 2 prove that. 0 and 1 prove that. The number system, everything lives in 0 and 1. It just absolutely proves that. It absolutely proves a God. And a God is just a creator, and we live in his creation. And I don't see why that's so hard to comprehend. There are 10 dimensions. Now, why 10? Because there's 10 numbers that make up all other numbers. Now, numbers are just words that describe things. But it's the universal language, because in any language, a thing can be numbered by its name of just one thing. Now, we're not giving value to what the thing is. We're just calling it something. And it's 1 of something, it's 2 of something, it's 3 of something, and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now 11 is 2 1s, 22 is 2 2s, and on forever. It's just a recycling of 1 and nothing, something and nothing. So 0 is no numbers, 1 is one number, and then 2 is the end of something, the beginning and the end. So 1 and 2. But 1 comes out of nothing. Now, we don't know what that nothingness is. Now, that's the whole point of the whole universe thing, where it says universe is time and space. but we don't know what time and space is. So we just call it existence. Now, religions say this deity, this godhood, this creator holds existence. You usually define God as a creator. Now, the people that don't want to believe in a creator, they're basically saying they're the creator or their system is the creator because they're defining existence as 1 and 2. They're not recognizing 0. They're saying time and space, 1 and 2 is already in existence. And then there's no creator. Now let me give you the explanation of this creation. Monotheistic religions that say there's one God, one deity, one creator. They say, no, God holds nothingness, and then he's 1 and then he's 2. He's the beginning and he's the end. Now, it's very interesting in the creation story in the Bible. That's what this is talking about. It's very misunderstood because people think it's talking about 7 literal days. It's not talking about 7 literal days. It's talking about 7 dimensions. It's kind of talking about the dimensional field in all 10 dimensions. The 8th dimension is, I just call it like a time loop. I like to do the shape of numbers. So if you take 8, you have 8 points on a piece of paper. The paper is just existence itself. The paper is just nothingness. The paper is just 0. And then you have 1. That's just 1 dot on a piece of paper. 2 is the end of that something, the 1 and the 2. It's the beginning and end, but you can't see it yet. 3, then you can see it, but you can only see part of it. You can't see all 3 dimensions at the same time. You can't see height, you can't see depth, and you can't see width all at the same time. You can see a part of it, and you know it's there, and you can measure it, and then you can walk around and you can see the other side of it. But you can't see it all at the same time. The 3rd dimension is us. It is our land. The 4th dimension is time. It's something outside of our vanishing point. It's the sun and the moon and the stars. The 5th dimension is a shadow land. It's shadowing your desires and your emotions, and it lives in a realm. It lives in a dream state. The 6th dimension is another form of a dream state. It's like a nightmare state. It shadows it not perfectly. It shadows it in a cube, so you can have it shadowed equally, or you can have it shadowed not equally. The shape isn't always the same. It can be the opposite of the same. 7 is then there's a higher vanishing point. We consider that heaven. I consider 8 a time loop, and then 9 a power grid. There's 1 point off of 9, one stem that's leading you into this power grid, but it's not a higher vanishing point. And then 10 is back to the beginning, is 1 and 0. And then everything comes from 1 and 0, and then everything just repeats itself. And then all the other numbers are loops. So you'll see the Masons really like 33 because it's a number that just reciprocates itself. And they think through the creation they can become the creator. So in God's story of creation, he says on the first day he creates light. That's just 1. Now he also mentions in the very beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. He just says it right in the beginning. The author says, God created the heavens and the earth. And he also says he was presiding over the deep and he was presiding over the waters. Now, it's very interesting that he takes this approach where he says it was already there. He doesn't say he creates it. Now, I think the reason he does that is to show you his position where he is outside the creation, but he also needs a mirror to understand the creation. He also needs something to know that he exists. Now, the reason he creates us, I believe, is so we can show that he exists. The water will mirror to him, and he'll know he exists. He knows he's not the water, but he needs to know that he exists. If he doesn't have water, he doesn't have anything to mirror himself. How does he know he exists? How does he recognize his existence? He just is existence itself. And then 2, he separates the waters from the waters. Now he calls it the firmament, and in the 4th day he's going to call it the firmament again, and he's going to call it time. He's doing that because he's giving it a number. He's giving it the 4th dimension. He's giving it 4 points. You have 2 points, and then you have the 3rd point, which is shapes, and then the 4th point can't connect to all 3 points at once, unless you draw a circle around it. So if you take a piece of paper and you draw any shapes on that piece of paper, and you try to draw 4 shapes that all touch each other at the same time, you can't. You'll have one that doesn't touch the other one. That's time. It can't, unless you draw a circle around it. But if you draw a circle around it, then you're encompassing everything within that, and then you can't recognize the time. You can't recognize the symbols that create time. Then the time is the creator. The time is the God. The time is your circle, is your sphere, and then the sphere would be God. God is outside the planes, and that we can recognize it as planes. He tells us that it's planes of existence. It's not spheres. It's not circles. You can't recognize circles. He is outside of our time. The time is just signs and symbols. We see the sun and the moon and the stars, and it creates our clock. Now, we don't use God's clock. We don't recognize God's clock. God, on the seventh day rested. He set a day aside for himself. Now, I believe he set a day a year aside for himself, but we don't follow that calendar. There's an international fixed calendar that people really like that puts Sunday on the first day of every month, and it's 28 days and 13 months. They don't like that. They don't like that because the sun would always be in the sky every day on the same days. So on your birthday, the sun would be in the same day. Your birthday would be on the same day that you were born according to the sun. And they don't like that because they like to play with the power of the sun, and they like to manipulate it to use the power of the stars, steal the power of the stars to then become gods and do all these crazy things on these weird star days to try to get us to worship them. And the fifth day the animals were created. The sixth day we were created. We are below God. God is on the seventh day. God is a higher vanishing point. Now, it's really popular for the kids to take the DMT and the ayahuasca. And what do they see? They see shadows of beasts. They see devil dogs, and they see dragons, and they see snakes and serpents, and they see lizard people, and they see the clockwork elves. They're seeing shadows of the creation. They're seeing versions of their emotions, and then it's trapped in a piece of the creation because they're using the created order to then become God, to have a spiritual experience, have an emotional experience, to recreate the creation. They're going to these lower dimensional fields to try to become God. And in some cases, these deities are telling them they're God. Now, they're fallen deities, and it lives in a dream state. Now, the sixth dimension, I don't think you go there until you die, but that is like this crazy cube. And I think we might even be stuck in a crazy cube. I don't know if the circumference of the circle is a circle, or if the pillars that the earth, the land that's kind of inboxing the water, is a square. And if it is, then that would make sense. And then the sky is, I believe it's flat. I don't believe it's domed. And then the stars then would create like a cube. And we are kind of trapped in this existence. And that's what people don't like. They don't like the fact that we can't go outside of this existence. We can't see the earth. We can't go above in a rocket ship. They tried to blow a hole in the upper atmosphere to try to get out. They call it Operation Fishbowl because they thought they lived in a fishbowl and they wanted to get out because they're crazy people that think they can recreate the creation. So the creation, does live in a dimensional field, and God is zero, he's nothing. God is one, he's the beginning. God is two, he's the end of that beginning. He's the beginning of the end. He's the Alpha and the Omega. He's the name above all names. He's the name above all creation. He's the name above you. He's the name above me. He's the name above the animals. And that's what he's saying in the creation story. And he's above the creation. Water has a spiritual connection. It has a interdimensional connection. So does blood. And then there's time. We manipulate the time. We manipulate the clock. That's 4. God made the sun and the moon and the stars on the 4th day. He made the animals on the 5th day. When we try to recreate the creation, we see beasts. We put the beasts on our money, or we put men on our money. It used to be very bad to put people on your money. People used to think that was very bad and wouldn't do it. They used to put animals on the money. You shouldn't have money in general. It's just a manipulation of the creation. And then God, it's his day. God is 7. God is the sovereign. He's the name above all names. And then 8 in a numbers way is a time loop. It's 2 zeros. And then 10. And then 9 is a power grid. And then 10 is back to the beginning. So those are the 7 dimensions of heaven.